So in this video, I want to talk about modifiers, but not just modifiers. I want to talk about loot in Frontiers. I want to talk about how these modifiers will affect frustrations versus loot and so on. Because recently, there's been a decent amount of mixed opinions about a recent modifier that popped up in Vanguard Ops that I'll show up on the screen right now, where essentially it forces a loadout. Basically, what it says is dealing damage with scout rifles, pulse rifles, and grenade launchers will like lose their damage as you like use it, and then it will start to increase damage though when you're using those weapons for your SMGs and shotguns. And it will do like the same thing if you're using a shotgun. It will boost grenade launchers and do less damage to your shotgun or submachine gun or whatever. But at the bottom, it also said that if you use any other weapon type, it's going to do less damage in the playlist. Now, obviously, this has been getting mixed opinions, specifically on the people that don't like it, have been saying that this is feeling very like forced loadout kind of stuff, especially for a core playlist. This is not something that I feel like is a good idea, because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that singes, if you're not using like the singe that is like for that playlist, so if it's like solar and you're using arc, you're actually doing less damage than if there wasn't a singe activated. And that's kind of why like singes you would think would be like, oh, I'm gonna do massive damage if I use this. There's one reason why I hate singes in general is because I've experienced Destiny 1 where we had burns, and burns were like 100 to 200% more damage if you were using them. Plus, they were like a double-edged sword where the enemies were also doing way more damage to you. So like if it was like Omnigul for the strike and it was arc burn, oh, it was yeah, it was rough. But you're also doing a lot of damage, making it fun. I honestly thought that was pretty fun. Singes are just, they've been really boring to me. They're just kind of like, oh, 25% more, damage, I guess. But I feel like with the every activity being like, I think it's like -5 power now, it's pretty much like you're supposed to use whatever the burn is now. And that's not good. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know the math of the graph of the damage and everything with these singes, but I just know that they're not as cool as burns. Like, burns were cooler, okay? Sorry, singes, but burns were amazing. That was where, like, the forcing of loadouts made more sense, because you were getting a huge benefit if you were using that. If you weren't using it, then you were just doing the regular damage. So that's your choice. But like, I liked burns because it really allowed you the option to build into whatever weak rotation of modifiers there were. And in Destiny 1, I think they did modifiers perfect. So before I even like go into like loot and talking about tier 5 loot for Frontiers with these modifiers and so on, a prime example with Destiny 1 was they had like a burn. Then they would have a modifier that would boost maybe like your weapon or something. Like there was airborne, where if you jumped in the air, you did like 100% more damage. And then there would be like arc burn. And that was hilarious, because if you ran around with like 4th Horseman and you jumped up at the boss, oh my gosh, the amount of damage you did, it was fun. It was interesting. It took something that you were doing already in like just doing like the strike, except changed it up, because now you're jumping up and down with 4th Horseman because of the modifiers, where it was not a, hey, you're forced to do this to do like optimal DPS. It was like, hey, if you do this, you're going to see some really funny outcomes. And I loved that about Destiny 1. One of the things that I'm really getting frustrated with Destiny nowadays is this whole focus on frustration to meet the loot, like threshold, versus making sure that it's still like fun. As like a huge focus. And when it comes to the core playlist, it's been playing it safe. I even said one of the coolest ideas that they could do for core playlists going forward would be having one burn, so that 200, 300%, whatever it was, damage boost, then have a ability or kind of like a tech kind of upgrade. So airborne, brawler, grenadier, where you're getting your grenades a lot and you're doing more damage with your grenades. And then a weapon type buff. So speed, obviously we have heavy, the heavy arms, whatever, what I think it's called, heavy arm. I actually don't even remember what it was called. Why? But there was specialist and small arms back in D1. We actually did have it in D2 for Guardian games, which was so disappointing to see small arms there. But you would have small arms or specialist or heavy, and then you would have like a painful modifier, whatever it be, or two, to kind of like counter all these build crafting crazy stuff that you'll have, like where it's not just like a snooze fest of just taking out everything. You're going to have something that's going to hinder you, but not in a way where you're going to force your loadout kind of idea, you know? So that was kind of where I was hoping core playlists would go in Destiny 2. They never even done that. It's always been Singes. They've always just had like just focus on heavy. They don't have specialist or small arms. I don't think they have specialist as a core modifier in Vanguard ops, but I know that it's popped up in Guardian games, which is, like I said, disappointing that it's never been inside of just in general Destiny. So yeah, but that's kind of where when it comes to a core playlist, your focus is making it fun, not frustrating, because if you make it frustrating, I mean, it's a core playlist. You're going to have new lights going in there being like shooting just an SMG and being like, why is it doing no damage? And then, because let's be real, a lot of new players going into Vanguard ops and stuff like that are not going to read the modifiers. They're just going to go, oh, this is the PvE activity that's on the main screen. Let me go here. So that's kind of where I am about this modifier. But even if you go, well, it's to experiment for the future of Frontiers. This is where, and I do want to make a big video talking about loot in general, but this is where I'm worried about Frontiers, where Bungie has no idea what they're doing when it comes to how this scale that is like inside of Destiny when it comes to activities, where when the scale is tipped too much in one direction, it's going to cause issues. Even if it, like, an activity is just giving you way too much loot and it's way too easy, you're going to have people be like, yeah, well, you were just handed that loot. A good example is the crafting of weapons in Seasons. Like, it was just way too easy to do that it made it pretty much just like, yeah, well, what's the, you know, wow, yay, I got this in like one day, all the red borders done in the seasonal activity, and now there's no reason to do the seasonal activity and stuff like that. You don't want that to happen too much. Granted, though, I see you people out there that want the crafting back. Hold with me till, like, you know, I talk about like loot and stuff in a future video, but I agree that what Bungie did with this recent episode is very mixed. And as for me, I don't really like crafting to an extent with like the red border grinds, but at the same time, the way that they did it with this episode is like, it's really kind of not so good, which like I said, I'll talk more about that in a separate video where I just talk about loot overall in this entire game. But when it comes to Frontiers, they're going to be experimenting with this like new loot system where you can get up to like tier 5 loot. And let's be real, whenever it comes to like adept loot or whatever, majority of players are going to go for the better version, even if it's like double perks. So in this case, let's look at Into the Light. When Into the Light came out, a lot of people didn't care if they got a god roll of a regular weapon. They wanted the shiny version to be the roll that they were looking for, because it, one, double perks, and two, it had the shiny, you know, thing to it. It had the ornament. And this is where it's like Bungie should take note on that a lot of players are focusing on the higher tier loot. So yeah, make sure you make the content that has the high tier loot not be like super duper frustrating and not rewarding enough, and then on top of that make everything else obsolete essentially. Even if it's like a tier 3 weapon, people are not going to want to touch it. And that's where I get worried when it comes to this whole idea. Because right now, we have double perks dropping inside of Onslaught. They are, I believe, a higher chance. Like, it's not guaranteed, and that's where my issues come in with loot. That's one thing, which I'll talk about, like I said, in a separate video about loot. But in Onslaught with hard mode, it's only a chance drop, but it's a higher chance. But I've gotten a fully masterwork double drop to drop inside of regular Onslaught, the 50 waves, though, on the final level, like wave 50 or whatever it was. I think it was wave 50 when it dropped for me, but it's very rare to see, though. That's the big thing, but it's still possible. What I mean by this, like into the conversation, is that what if like tier 5s never drop in Vanguard ops, like the core playlist? They never drop in the core playlist of Crucible. They never drop in core playlist. Well, there is no other playlist for Gambit. There's no Gambit Prime or anything like that, but you get the point that I'm making, that like, then why do those things at all? Because it's just like, you're kind of just playing the play. Like, you got to look at like the value of what you're doing in Destiny, because Destiny makes a big emphasis on that your grinds are very important. If you're not getting certain things or the best version of things, then why do them? And that's kind of been the mindset with Destiny forever. And that's, like I said, that's where I'm worried, where there's this scale. And this scale, it's like Bungie ignores it. What I mean by this is that there's like a scale of like, one side is the level of difficulty and frustration, and then the other side of the scale is like, you know, the value of loot or whatever, or how much. Let's take like the like master version of the raid, where it can be pretty frustrating to do. Sometimes it could take you 3 hours, 4 hours to beat an encounter, and that's pretty frustrating. So you put that weight onto the scale. And back then, before we had this whole cool idea where once you crafted all weapons, you get 3 perks on the last 2 columns, pretty much guaranteed. I think it is guaranteed. There was a glitch where it wasn't. But if you got all the crafted weapons, if you get a weapon, it's guaranteed to have 3 perks, and it's also adept. The value of the loot made it worth it when it's like that. Even though it took 3 hours, number one, it's adept, guaranteed also to drop because you did the thing, and on top of that, you were getting like so many perks to it, so then your odds of getting the role that you're looking for is a lot higher than if it was just 1 perk and that's it on the last 2 columns. But yeah, like that was good. I would argue that it does suck that you have to do the challenges. I feel like if you do the challenge, you guarantee 2 weapons to drop, or maybe 3. But if you don't do the challenge, you only get 1 weapon guaranteed. That's the other huge issue, is that I feel like for every single raid, weapons and armor, like there should be like you guarantee a weapon and an armor piece. I don't know why we still have this issue. I'm doing garden grinds, and my gosh, and I'm talking about loot when I want to do that as a separate thing, but that's another big conversation in there. But yeah, so you get what I mean, like where there's like this like scale, and sometimes they just don't do it right. I mean, like right now, if you do the master dungeon for you know, Vesper, you don't get double perks on your weapon. You don't get an adept version of the weapon. So the scale of frustration is weighted, and the loot is just not worth it. It's just you're doing something that's more frustrating than fun, and the loot isn't really kind of alleviating that. Because if the loot is worth it at the end, you're gonna be like, oh, thank goodness, at least I got this. So I went through this and I got a lot of loot, or a big, you know, triple perk adept weapon. Like, I would do master dungeons if that was the case. Doesn't work like that. I hope that maybe down the road they do that. So when it comes to frontiers, imagine the only way to even guarantee a tier 5 weapon, like just 1, and it's only 1 perk. You have to turn on all these frustrating modifiers, and I'm talking about like ones where, oh, you got to go melee the enemy to get rid of their shield. And then on top of that, you got to use SMGs and then switch to a pulse rifle or whatever, like vice versa, like that one modifier. Then you also have a modifier where if you don't jump a decent amount of times, your health doesn't regen. Also, you got to be next to your teammates or you'll start to lose health. Also, every enemy is 25 power levels above you, where it's basically like almost like contest mode. And also, if you're not using this one specific build and you're throwing and so on, and if you die, then you go to orbit and blah, blah, blah. And it becomes way too frustrating, super duper frustrating. And it's only guaranteed, or maybe even worse, chance on a tier 5 weapon. Then that's not good. That's where it becomes way too frustrating, where it's not worth it at all. Unless these tier 5 weapons are like Galahorn Destiny 1 level of like, wow, this is, pre-nerf, like where it's really, 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 really strong. No. Even right now with these episode weapons, they are very, very good with like the perks and stuff like that they have. But they're not like game breaking. You can still use other weapons instead, and they will kind of give you the same vibe. That's the problem with loot nowadays, where it's just that we've gotten so many strong things that it's like, how do you make something better? And it's pretty much impossible with legendary weapons at this rate. And that's kind of where it's like, you can't make the value like just pretend like it's like really, really, really good. It's got to be good, and it's got to match what level of what you're doing, like how much of that loot you're getting or the value of it, to match the frustration that you're going to go through. Like Bungie can, type on their keyboard of all these ideas of modifiers. Oh, what if you got to do this and this and this and this, and then this is this. But if the loot doesn't like mimic the frustration, then it's just going to cause so much headaches. And then on top of that, like I mentioned, if all the fun playlists give you no tier 5s, like not even just a 10% chance, then yikes. Then you are pretty much limiting what people are going to be playing, because they're going to focus the high tier loot. I know that there's going to be some people out there being like, I don't care, I am fine with non-adepts. Like, I know, I get that. Like, it's just like with people that play trials. There are people that are just happy with just having the regular version be the role that they're looking for, rather than going through the pain of trying going flawless to get the adept version. But me, I am one of those people that are like, if it's not the adept, I'm going to throw it out, because there's a better version out of there, out of the loot pool. And I need to get that one, because then I would be satisfied, because I have the top tier of whatever it is. It's the same thing with this episode right now. Technically, the top tier weapon of the seasonal weapons is the double perk ones. If I don't got a double perk one, I'm going to be like, I don't really want. And that's where this whole loot problem, I don't know. Maybe it's a mental thing. I don't know. It's just, I got to have the best thing. And that's why these modifiers kind of scare me a bit, because like, is Destiny just going to be like, not where it's like, it is more frustrating just because it's more frustrating. It's more frustrating because we are forcing ourselves to deal with the most painful stuff for the highest tier stuff, and then never touching any of the other ends of the game, the fun, the more casual end. Like, I don't mind a challenge, I don't mind difficulty, but if it becomes too frustrating and such, it's just not as worth it. Like, going through one encounter in a master raid for like 4 hours, and then being greeted with back then it was just one perk on the last 2 columns, and it being adept, and that's the only like new thing about it, didn't feel worth it at all. It's like, wow, I just went through this for 5 hours. Yes, I know, skill issue. There's some teams that can get through master raid in like every encounter in like 10 minutes. Ooh, whoop-de-doo. You're welcome. You're super skilled, but a lot of players don't really have that kind of, luxury where it's like everybody on their team is completely stacked and they can get through encounters really quickly. So the level of frustration could be very different. It's just that, yeah, with Bungie already being allergic on making loot very, very worth it and also reigning in your inventory, I'm a little bit worried. I know that people are like, well, right now you can pop these tonics and get the weapons super fast. I mean, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think that it increases your chances of the double perks that drop on any of the difficulties. But regardless, there's been people doing the expert version, the 2065 version of Onslaught, and they're not even getting one double perk weapon. That's where I'm saying, like, uh-oh, going into Frontiers. Because those are things that take time, maybe like 70 minutes to go through, and you're not even guaranteed one, at least. I've even said Bungie should be a little bit nicer and be like, hey, it's guaranteed to get one double perk once wave 30 starts. And then from there, it's a chance to get another one through like the in-between rounds, like kind of like what they did in Into Light, sort of. And then it's guaranteed every 10th wave. So wave 40 and wave 50. And then wave 50, you get like 3 double perk weapons. Imagine that would be like where I think that makes sense. But yeah. So I don't know. These modifiers, they're interesting, but I really think that Bungie's way too focused on making things just frustrating, or just like, hey, here's this goofy thing that I coded in the game, rather than trying to look at what was, which is Destiny 1. I miss when the build crafting in Destiny 1 for Strike playlist was actually enjoyable because it made you feel like a super legend of Destiny. Like, I mean, again, for those of you who were around during that time with like the airborne specialist with arc burn, you were jumping up at Alakul and you took Alakul out in a second. It was hilarious. Oh, that's not difficult. It's a core playlist. Like, it's just that's fun. That's hilariously fun. It's a video game, everybody. Did you forget about that too? I feel like Destiny has made us forget that. But, you know, it's okay to have these frustrating modifiers at times. But I feel like it's just the mindset for these things are where I'm a little bit scared for Frontier's future. Because I don't know if they're even going to have this scale mentally there. And yeah, it worries me, but I know that this right now is kind of like the experimenting stage. I don't think that they're going to be having these modifiers just be in the core playlists going forward. We're probably going to see those in the higher tier levels of difficulty when they do that down the road. But yeah, I don't know. But that's just my thoughts on it. I don't know. It's just weird, those modifiers. Like, it's just we're going back to Leviathan, where it's like you gotta use this loadout or whatever. Again, I get it, maybe for like grandmasters and stuff like that, but not core playlists. And even then, it's just don't force loadouts like that. It's just not really that fun, unless the loot's really good, and I don't know about that. But anyways, thank you so much for listening. Hope you have a chibi-tastic day, night, evening, wherever you are. And I'll see you in the next video. Chibi out.